Okay, with me I have Osamu Yamugata, who is the fund manager for Aberdeen Emerging Markets Small Companies. And he is also the winner of this year's Emerging Markets Fund. Congratulations, Osamu.
Thank you very much.
So let's kick off this interview then. If you look at smaller companies in emerging markets, what would you say is the biggest challenge selecting these smaller companies in the emerging market sector?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's actually resource, company resource, that's the biggest challenge. And the reason for that is, smaller companies, especially in EM, tend to have, wider dispersion or the risk of returns effectively. And that's a factor of a few things. I mean, first and foremost, there's a distinct lack of information. So you have to do your own research or work. And, there are far more smaller companies in EM than larger ones. So identifying and understanding companies, it takes a lot of, it's actually quite labor intensive. It takes a lot of work. And then the second point, the ESG risks are higher. In particular, governance can really make or break investment cases. Smaller companies tend to have controlling or influential owners who probably still manage the company. So the risk of a governance mishap is much, much higher. So you have to make sure that you know who you're investing with and make sure the governance, accounting and everything like that is up to scratch. And then the third one is just execution risk. Smaller companies tend to be earlier in their growth cycle. So the potential growth returns are higher and more attractive on average, let's say. But it takes much higher execution risk to justify or to grow as quickly as one expected to. So all these factors have to be managed. All these risk factors have to be managed, and you just can't outsource any of the above. So it takes usually takes a fairly large team, and as I said, you can't outsource it. So people that can internalize the research, have the capabilities to do that, and have been investing for a long time. I think they're the key challenges that you have to have to invest in the EM small caps.
Okay, I see. And if we look at the process of selecting companies and finding companies to the fund, could you walk us through that process? And would you say that due to the fact that it's the reasons you talk to about the challenges in investing in emerging markets, would you say that the process looks a bit different than, for example, if you had a US small cap fund?
No, I think it's the same everywhere. I mean, a smaller company is a smaller company. The market cap might be different because of the size of the market, but I think the risks are still quite similar. So we take an approach where, we look at everything from the bottom up basis. We have a preference for stocks that sort of exhibit high quality, by high quality, strong return profile, strong balance sheet, very strong ESG credentials, and we focus on governance as well. And a company that has the potential for high, but at the same time, sustainable growth. So we want compounders in a smaller company space. And to do that, it's literally we go out into the market, talk to companies, write our in-depth research reports, do a lot of background checks on managers, founders, all these sort of things. And it takes us a little while to build up the knowledge base for us to be comfortable to invest in a company. Now, when we take that approach, very stock specific focused, what we try to do at the same time is we don't take too many top-down sort of country sector bets. We're relatively agnostic in that sense, so we make sure we're well diversified. And because of the labor-intensive nature, we prefer to concentrate our stock bets in a portfolio, maybe 60 to 70. That's a typical stock cap for us. And that's something that we've done for a long, long time.
Okay, I see. And if we look at the portfolio, is there any companies that you think stand out, or any companies that you would like to highlight?
I mean, I think when you have thousands of companies as a universe, and you decide to focus on 60 or 70. I like to think, all our companies look extra interesting from some perspective. I mean, if I had to sort of pick one, which I think will have good long-term and also short-term prospects at the moment, I'm quite positive on a stock called Macolot Industries in Taiwan. They produce textiles or clothing for big global brands like Gap, fast retailers, who manage the Uniqlo brands. For brands, it's becoming increasingly important to ensure quality of their supply chain. And we're seeing a lot of consolidation amongst the vendors or the providers of textiles, because companies are being differentiated on many things, speed to product, a responsible supply chain. Brands carry a massive brand risk, trusting their supply chain, and also companies that have the ability to invest in flexible modern equipment. And Macolot are very much at the sort of forefront of this vendor consolidation. And they've been investing well. They're gaining a lot of share in new trends, or at least what I think are new structural trends, whether it's athleisure or sporting goods, which has seen a lot of demand since the pandemic has begun. And I think another thing that this company has is they were very quick to move out of a single sort of location of factories to a more diversified location. So they have factories in Vietnam, Indonesia, very little in China these days. And what that affords is also a lot of choice for clients where they source their products from. So there's a real momentum behind the stock. If you look at the US, it's a market that's growing well at the moment, and there's a lot of pent-up demand because the supply chain has been so affected over the last year. So brands are restocking their supplies, so I think it's a company that's riding on a very strong structural trend, and I think it's the lead in this space. So yeah, we're quite excited about that one.
Good. Thank you. And if we look at a broader perspective, we look at maybe themes and trends that companies in emerging markets or emerging countries can capitalize on. Where do you see any trends and themes? Previously, we have like the semiconductor sector has been a huge among some companies, but are there any trends and themes that you see the coming years?
Yeah, I think rather than sort of specifying a particular industry per se, I think the most interesting trend in EM and the small cap space in particular is just outsourcing by global companies because of increasing complexity and specialization. And you can use that example across a variety of spectrums. So in the past, outsourcing to EM used to be purely about cost arbitrage. Now, while that's still true to an extent, we're also finding that smaller companies in the EM space are developing products that are quite niche, specialized, dominating their smaller sphere of influence, I guess, which are ultimately better than what you can get elsewhere. So you have this very attractive combination of cost arbitrage, better products. And I guess the technology space is where this is happening the most. Now, nowadays, IT outsourcing to EM isn't about call centers or replacing your basic IT staff. It's about helping companies in globally digitalize with very product platform specific projects that can't be handled internally. So margins and growth on a strong upward trend because you have to pay up for these specialized skills. And for many companies in the space, they are coming from markets like India, Vietnam, the CIS, and we see very strong growth and value still in these names. You can also apply that sort of same logic to the hardware space. Specialist companies are becoming leaders in a specific niche that's invaluable to the growth of data, or handling the growth of data. We have a company in Taiwan called A-Speed, and they are the leading provider of a specific part of a chip called a BMC, and which basically makes sure that the server chip is working and will notify very quickly if something goes wrong. And pretty much every single data center that's being built out has an A-Speed chip on their servers. And they have such dominance in a very niche market that you have a combination of very high returns and very strong growth. So I think, even at the moment you hear all the noise about yields and COVID reopening and, rush to value, in the medium term, the one sure global mega theme, I think, is the explosive growth in data. And any companies that are very good at storing the data, processing it, analyzing, understanding it, and has a specific moat in what they do, will continue to do well for a while. And I think that's, this mega theme, I guess, or the most interesting theme in the small cap space that we're identifying at the moment.
Okay, I see. And are you looking at investments in sort of like the data storage business, as you mentioned, or how does it look for the fund?
Yeah, so we have around more than a third of the portfolio, I would say, invested in technology. Now, whether that's EV, decarbonization, green energy, semiconductors, there's a wide variety out there. But yeah, that's probably our biggest exposure from a top-down perspective. But as I mentioned before, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. So we do try to have a diversified exposure to many things.
Okay, great. Thank you for the interview, Osamu, and congratulations for Aberdeen Emerging Markets Smaller Companies Fund being the winner in the Emerging Markets category, as mentioned in the beginning of the interview. And I wish you good luck with coming prizes and coming challenges with finding interesting companies in the emerging market space.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a good place to be, so we can't complain. So, and thank you very much for the award.
No problem. Thank you. Have a good day.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.